Hey, Vartika, good morning. How are you?
I am doing really very well, thanks. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us here today at SerpGuru Coffee Chats. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to Vartika Ambwani. She is a lifelong learner of all things tech and startups. She's currently the Vice President of FinTech at Silicon Valley Bank, a US bank based in Silicon Valley that helps technology companies with the lending needs and many other things that she'll probably share with us in this conversation. So I just learned before we prepare for this conversation that Vartika is actually moving to Florida, to Miami.
Yeah.
And she's gonna talk about that a little bit too. But I don't want to steal the thunder. Vartika, maybe you can just share with us a little bit about your trajectory up until now, and then we have some questions for the audience afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me here again. I'm Vartika. I'm a VP on the FinTech team at SVB. SVB is a commercial bank. So just like any other bank, we're very much focused on the commercial side of the business, not consumer. We're very focused on VC-backed tech startups. So that's our core target market. And we offer services from regular commercial banking services, lending, and so forth. But one of the great things that we have in the industry is that we're very much focused on the tech ecosystem. So SVB is divided by sectors, and then we're divided by stages. So by sectors, we have an enterprise team, consumer team. I'm part of the fintech sector, which is one of the newest teams at SVB. And then we're divided by stages. So we have an early stage team that works with our clients that are pre-Series A. Growth, which is what I'm part of, which is post-Series A to our later stage companies, almost that are 75 million or up in revenue. And then we have our corporate banking team that works with our clients that are much later, public, or about to go public. So that's how we're divided. Prior to SVB, I did work at 2 fintech startups as an operator. Amazing experience at both of them. One of my first startups was actually a client of SVB. So I got to work very closely with SVB from a client and got to see exactly how they support startups and how they support entrepreneurs, which got me very interested. And before my 2 fintech startups, I'm originally from Canada. So I was in a very traditional banking role at Scotiabank, which is one of the large 5 banks in Canada. And then got intrigued by fintech and decided to move to the Bay Area.
Excellent. Well, that's a great trajectory. Definitely, many countries, both sides of the equation on the startup role, if you will, doing the work, and now enabling startups in growth mode. And I'm glad we're having the conversation because actually SerpGuru is targeting the growth marketing space. So we typically ask our founders or entrepreneurs share, what problem they're solving for. And I would like to ask a question in that way. In your role at SVB, what problem you solve for the startups in the fintechs in your cohort?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting because when I was at a startup, my goal and my mission was very clear. This is exactly what I'm here for. This is how I add value, and this is how I support this company. It's very different with SVB. So one of the things I do have to mention is a thing that we take great pride in is our market share. Our market share is in the mid 70s for majority of our sectors. We bank about 78% of FinTech 50, which is a list that comes out every single year. So we bank pretty much all the major players in the market. And that's something that gets me very excited about my job. In terms of what our support is, I think for us, our biggest key is how do we make our companies more successful, whether it's from a commercial banking standpoint, whether it's from a lending standpoint. SVB has really strong network among VC, PE funds, but also startups itself, given our market share. So how do we connect companies with each other? How do we facilitate introductions? How do we make sure our companies have the highest probability to succeed? And we're supporting with that. So that's our mission right now. We play a role of a Switzerland, so we'll never pick one client over the other. But one thing that we do is really just support our clients to move forward.
Got it. No, that's great. And I think another key area of the startup world, and obviously a bank, is to getting customers, being efficient, effective at customer acquisition. So when you are prospecting new customers, how do you find information about them? How do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, I think we've gotten very lucky with our market share, and especially being in the Bay Area, you have a lot of repeat founders and repeat entrepreneurs who have worked with SVB and come to us directly. So we feel very grateful there and don't take that for granted. In terms of how we go about really having new prospects is having really strong relationships with our VC and PE clients, having very strong relationships with incubators, and being sponsors of big events and supporting communities. We make sure we have a really strong presence, especially in key markets like Bay Area and New York, but really across the country. And that's a really big driver for us in getting new clients.
Terrific. Obviously, you're focused on fintech, so that's the industry in particular you are focused on. But thinking in terms of the last year, where the pandemic has speed up a lot of businesses, has challenged many of the businesses too. Vartika, so what type of business attracts you the most? Is it a particular vertical within fintech? Is it high ticket, high volume? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, great question. So we did see fintech being adopted much more broadly during the pandemic. Our clients were just doing phenomenally well, just given the adoption that was happening on the digital side. The part of the vertical that I focus on, or the subsector that I'm really excited about, is the payments one. So just given the e-commerce activity, given the activity around the payment space, whether it's B2B or peer-to-peer, that's a space I'm very interested in and gets me very excited. And that's a space that's seeing a lot of innovation post-pandemic. So yeah, that's the one I'm really excited about, and that gets me going.
Great. Switching gears now to a little bit more about your work style in terms of productivity and resilience, in particular productivity.
Yeah.
How do you maintain yourself motivated?
Yeah, that's obviously very tough in the pandemic environment. I'm right now in Miami, so I needed a change of scenery, and I think that motivated me so much. But one thing that I've always done is have a routine. I feel like I work much better when I have a routine. I know exactly the time I'm waking up, the time that I'm putting into work, the things that I have to get accomplished. So I do have a pretty strict schedule and a pretty good routine that just keeps me going. And I make sure that I get a lot of things done that way. Just in terms of work, a trick that really helps for me, I do manage my calendar extremely well. So I try to just put a lot of my meetings in the morning, but I have high energy. And then I have my afternoon free to get everything done. And then usually at the end of the day, I would have key items that need to get finished the next day. And those get done first. So just, I think, hacks like that really help. It's also really important to keep your mind healthy.
Right.
So I do try, after work, I do try to go out, take walks and get some fresh air and just, keep my mind moving and keep the creative juices flowing. So those are really some of the things that have worked pretty well for me.
Great. So now, thanks for that. You're now in Miami. So can you share a little bit more about that move? What drove you to move here?
Yeah, I think this was a very temporary move. I'm only here for a couple of months, and then I'm back in the Bay Area. Okay. It was just something, I just needed a change of scenery, to be very honest. I got very sick of staying in my living room. San Francisco, unfortunately, just became a ghost town after all the tech companies were closed and everyone was moving. I had family in Miami, so it just kind of made sense to come here and be in a completely opposite side of the world, where it's not just tech oriented, it's much more well-rounded in terms of the industries. So yeah, only week 3 in, but really loving my time here, and just it's been again a great motivator, and just got me very excited again, and it's just been a great refresher.
Well, welcome here, even though it's a temporary move. Hopefully we'll hear great things about you in the community. As you probably see and notice, there's a lot of buzz around how we are planning to grow the tech community in Miami. So looking forward to that to expand.
And yeah, and my mind can always be changed. So I can totally stay here longer. I'm already liking it so much.
I was gonna say that. So you never know. You never know.
You never know.
Welcome here. You know, I will see. I live. I'm Peruvian. I moved here to the U.S. 18 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's in year number 8 in Miami. So
Wow.
it's I like it.
Yeah.
It's
Me too.
it's a good place to be. Now, in terms of, we like to also ask about hacks. And you share productivity style, but is there a particular hack that you could share with the SerpGuru community for productivity?
Ooh, a particular hack. I think just like managing your calendar is something I do really well. I try to make sure my meetings are consolidated together so I don't have gaps and I have time at the end of the day, couple hours, but I have no meetings and I can just be heads down and get work done. I think that works really well. And yeah, just having a routine and making sure your emails are well organized and having a to-do list. Those are really the things that just makes me on top of things. Just given the volume that we get, I have over 70 clients myself, 70 companies that I'm supporting, and you constantly get pinged. And these are all post-Series A clients. So definitely it's very important to make sure that you're on top of things.
Got it. Thanks a lot. So I think drilling a little bit down on the Series A, on the post-Series A companies, based on your expertise at SVB, are there any particular traits that you've seen of those companies that have made it successful and moved that to that stage? Because many times, you know, that 80% or 90% of the startups usually fail.
Yeah.
Before getting there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think repeat entrepreneurs have a high probability of success only because they have learned lessons from the last startup. They know exactly where to target. They know exactly the things that went wrong, and they're not making those same mistakes. So I think repeat entrepreneurs is one of them. Having a strong management team in general is very important. Something that we look for. Also, founders who manage burn very well. And a lot of people don't talk about that, just given in the Valley how easy it is to raise equity. And there is, you know, there's a lot of capital flowing. One thing that we always tell our founders is to be very careful about your burn. Make sure you're planning it right. Make sure you understand where you're spending the money and if it's actually resulting in revenue for you and actually resulting in success for you. So founders who are very burn focused do end up making really good decisions and have a higher probability to succeed. And then again, founders who put a really strong team in place. So hiring and having key hires in place who really understand the business that are very much focused and motivated to grow the company. On the early side, those are really the things that make a company very successful.
Excellent, thanks a lot. Going back now to I think that's actually a good answer. I would segue to my question about resilience. And having been yourself a two-time fintech operator, maybe you can shed some light in terms of what's been your biggest setback as an entrepreneur, and how did you come back from it?
Yeah, I think being at an early stage startup, and when I joined my company, we were doing about $1 million a month. And by the time I was leaving, we were doing over 100 million a month in loan originations. I mean, just that rocket ship growth, which is exactly why you moved to Silicon Valley, which is exactly why you work in tech. So I think there's setbacks, and that's part of life. Startups grow extremely fast, and they grow extremely fast with maybe not too much discipline. It's just a lot of trial and error. You have to constantly just be focused on on your purpose and what is it that you're trying to achieve. Every time there have been issues, I've never really taken them personally. I think you have to be focused on the problem, and you have to be focused in terms of why you're there and what you're doing. So it's not a great answer, but I think that's what makes you resilient. You just don't take things too hard, and you remain very focused on your purpose and your goal in terms of why you're there.
Terrific. One question that I don't know if you have come across to that particular area of the startup business or the fintech business. But in terms of, you talk about burn rate and how founders need to manage that very carefully.
Yeah.
But have you seen, to my earlier point about growth marketing, if there's any common trends that you've noticed of fintech startups in particular who are doing things well in terms of their marketing efforts?
Yeah, definitely. So again, it all comes down to burn. So startups who are really looking at their marketing campaigns and making sure they're tracking all the right metrics. They're actually looking at conversion. They're actually making sure their CAC makes sense. And that's something that you have to think about earlier on. If you're doing a lot of paid marketing, is it actually resulting in the conversion that you're looking for? Is it actually resulting in the users that you're looking for? And your cost of acquisition, does it actually make sense? And you're just not throwing money. So I think, again, startups who are very much focused on the metrics and the numbers, that's something that really helps them because then they have a purpose behind the money that they're investing. Another thing that we tell our startups that it doesn't always have to be paid marketing. There are a lot of fintech conferences that happen. Yes, they cost money, but they cost less money in terms of the brand awareness and the relevance that you can get. So conferences like Money 2020, conferences like Lendit, or CB Insights, there are a bunch of conferences that happen. So even if the CEO goes in as a speaker, or even if the CEO has, or if it's an early stage startup, if they're doing a pitch event or so forth, those are the things that can really generate a lot of hype for you. And you can get a lot of users to know about your product. A lot of times companies would have, funding announcements, which are free. You can just have a funding announcement on Crunchbase or on Fortune or so forth. And that generates a lot of hype. So you can be creative beyond just spending money digitally and spending money on social. There are a bunch of ways to get your startup out there that can have a much more positive ROE than just paid social or paid marketing in general.
Excellent. No, I think that those are really great insights that I hope the community listen to this chat definitely can leverage. Thanks a lot for that.
Of course.
Moving to the fun side of the questions, if you will.
Okay.
Is there based on your personal interest, is there any favorite book, movie, or music band that you are pondering right now?
Well, on the music side, it's a very simple question because I'm Canadian. I support Drake 100% and always will. So that's a very simple question. In terms of books, I've actually started reading. I've always been a fan of Malcolm Gladwell. So I've read a bunch of his books just because he makes you, or he challenges you to think in a different way and think in something that's just not linear, but also have a creative thinking about the world around you. I love that. I'm currently reading Barack Obama's book, Promised Land, which I'm absolutely loving. He's obviously someone I've always really looked up to. So I think, again, with books, I'm just always interested in books that open up my mind. And I love reading about people who are very successful and who have had an interesting path to success. That also keeps my mind open. But yeah, just trying to read interesting things and keep myself engaged.
Excellent. And my last question for you and for our audience is there any fun fact that people don't know about you?
Oh, wow. Fun fact. I've always been really into sports. I don't know, but I talk a lot about that. So I think a lot of people know that. But again, coming from Canada, growing up in Toronto, I'm a huge basketball fan. Raptors are my home team. I'll always love them, always support them. One of my life goals actually is to be a part or an owner or some sort of owner in like a basketball team. I think that would be super cool. Or like a soccer club. I think that would be super cool. But yeah, in general, I just really enjoy sports, really enjoy music, good food, nice weather. So Miami is pretty much perfect.
Definitely. I'll send you some pointers of places to go for that, Vartika. That's great.
Yeah,
well, it's been a pleasure to have you here at SerpGuru Coffee Chats. Best of luck with your spring/summer here. And I'm sure Silicon Valley Bank will be poised to bigger growth this year, given the industry that they are supporting. So best of luck, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.